All right, Lone Star Gunners, welcome to the podcast. This is Lone Star Gun Talk, the official podcast of Lone Star Gun Rights, and I am your humble host, as always, Derek Wills. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Go ahead and chime on in comments where you are watching from. So, unless you've been living under a rock for the past week or so, you know that, well, everybody is panicking, and up until last week and a half ago, preppers were a bunch of crazies, and now everybody's like, oh, now I get it. Now, I consider myself a bit of a prepper, but to talk prepping, I wanted to bring in two people that I consider to be experts, but they would call themselves enthusiastic novices, I believe is their term, and that is our good friends from the Matter of Facts podcast. I've had Phil Rabelais on the show before. He is the author of the American Insurgent book, now available on Amazon, as well as we finally got his co-host, Andrew Bobo, on with us. And tonight we are going to talk about prepping. Y'all can go ahead and unmute and go ahead and say hello to the world.
Hello, world.
Hey, guys.
Of course, I had both of y'all pulled up on the opposite times that y'all were speaking, so that was great.
You had one job.
I know, and I totally... All right, so, Phil, a lot of people... I mean, you've been here a couple of times. Andy, you have not. If you have read American Insurgent, well, this is Andy Bob. Andrew, if you would, give us a little bit about yourself, since this is your first time. Who are you, and where do you come from? What got you into what you do, and all that fun stuff?
Well, my name is Andrew. Co-host of the Matter of Facts podcast. So basically, I mean, what got me here was, I don't know, long story short, I guess, growing up, I mean, my parents, they always, I call my parents, if anybody's listened to the show, or if you've ever said anything, I call my parents closet preppers, because they prep without saying it's prepping. They've been doing it for, ever since I was, little. And they don't consider it prepping. My dad looks at it, he laughs at the term prepping. But they really, I grew up with my parents. I grew up in the country, to where, we lost power. I live up in Michigan, and I'm from more of like central Michigan is where I'm from, rural town, we're just small town. I'm from the country. I don't remember, it was only a couple years ago that my family got away from 56K dial-up internet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and at that they went to they called it high speed satellite, and that was supposed to be high speed, but I think the dial-up was actually faster than the high speed. And yeah, it's I hate going to my parents because it's like the internet just sucks. But it's what happens when you live out in the country and stuff, and they don't run all the cables out that far. But no, I grew up I grew up with an oil lamp in almost in every room. I have an oil lamp sitting right next to me on my computer desk right now. It's just something that I like it. They look cool, so I keep it around just for the look. But also, we've lost power where I live right now, and I've powered it up. I've lit it up and carried it around the house before with me. But yeah, I mean, I grew up with an oil lamp in every house or every room, a flashlight, in almost in every drawer. Just prepared to the preparedness mindset has always been ingrained in me to just be ready for if the power goes out. That being said, my mom has always had a large garden growing up as well, and she's always canned. She taught me how to can. Just actually a couple years or last year, she taught me how to can venison with a buckeye shot, and so I'm kind of taking that, and I'm not. What's that?
This is not the same can that goes on the end of your AR, right? This is different cans.
No. No canning, pressure cooking with a pressure cooker, canning and preserving venison from a deer. She does that. She cans everything to preserve it food wise. My dad always hunted. If it was in season, he usually hunted it. And anytime they had to supplement anything, they always bought like a half a beef or a pig or something like that to supplement from a local farmer to supplement that extra meat. They always had a lot of food on hand. My mom has a huge pantry downstairs, and so it was always ingrained in me, to just that mindset. And then my uncle, he's become a big part in the in our podcast as well. He's a big influence to myself and a lot of people, but he's a big time prepper. He always talks about like he's always bought because he says he has OCD, but it's CDO, which is OCD backward or alphabetized rather. And so because he's so OCD, and so he's always talked about prepping and stuff like that growing up, and he's always been into it. And then talking to him over the years, like probably over the last 15 years or so, it's like I've really gotten into it. And so those have been my big influences. What really got me started, the kind of like the trigger a little, like, it's different for everybody, but really got me, what got me thinking was, I don't know if you're familiar with the show Jericho.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
Yeah. Well, basically the short end of it was, it's about a small town, and it's about a small town that there's some nuclear strikes throughout the U.S. and it knocks out all power in the U.S. And basically it's a small town that has to band together and survive, and it just revolves around these key individuals. And that really got me thinking of like, what if something, not necessarily like a nuclear event happened, but what if like the power went out? What if like certain things happened? How am I prepared? And I started looking at my supplies, and I'm like, I like to camp, I like to hike, so I'm like, okay, I got some food, I got some stuff, and it really helped me kind of nip it in the butt, and I ramped stuff up. And so that's really what got me started. And then I met Phil through Wasted Ammo Podcast, and he was hurting for a co-host, and I kind of like started hounding him, saying, hey, like, what do you want to do? You want to do I could be your co-host or whatever. And he was like, well, at first he was like, yeah, I'm looking for someone local. And then down the road, I think he kind of found out that, I don't know what it was, but he finally caved in. I mean, maybe I like harassed him long enough, and he saw me standing outside his window, and I don't know, but it's like a lost puppy kind of thing. He just took me in, but no, it's kind of interesting with Phil being in Louisiana, me here. It gives a different aspect to stuff, but I really like it. And but yeah, that's how basically I got to here.
Yeah, well, also
the long short version.
Well, it also provides a unique perspective, because prepping in Michigan is going to be different than prepping in Louisiana or Texas, because you have much more brutal winters than we do, and that's something that we don't consider down here because we don't have to. But that's, if something were to happen during the harsh winter months, that's pretty serious. Check it in the comments. Just we got John from El Paso, Crosby from Denver, Russell from Millsap, Texas, and Vicky from Carrollton. And then also Gary is watching from Central Michigan. He's a fellow Michigander in here for you. We also got Stephanie, Jeffrey, Greg, and Harold. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, guys. Let me bring in Mr. Rabelais. Phil, that oh so wonderful mugshot of yours. And So what's been going on, man? Tell us, fill us in as to what's new with Mr. Rabelais.
I mean, what's new with me is just more of the same, just, holding down the day job, taking care of the family, trying to push the podcast out. We've been seeing a lot of new people that are prepper curious, especially bearing in mind what's been going on in the world lately. A lot of people are suddenly realizing that the crazy guy down the street with, more guns than the National Guard and enough food to feed an army for a month might not be the crazy one after all, which I find incredibly gratifying at this point.
I know, it really, really is. The memes have been lit for sure, but
the memes have been amazing.
I'm telling you right here and now that if the coronavirus does nothing but provide me hours of entertainment surfing memes, it has been amazing.
But there are people that are legitimately concerned. I don't want to say that their paranoia is misplaced. I think that they're making it, the crisis is more fabricated than anything else. But to get into the mindset, if this is the thing to put you in the mindset of getting prepared for something, then that kind of makes it worth it.
Here's kind of my perspective, and I'm going to shamelessly steal an idea from Sam Culper from Forward Observer. And if anybody has not heard the name Sam Culper, Forward Observer, Google that and go listen to what that man has to say, because he's a lot smarter than I am about a lot of things. But Sam's big bend is like pushing the area study. In other words, like analyzing your individual situation, your environment, your surroundings, and figuring out what your biggest threat is that you need to pay attention to and prepare for. And that's something that, like, I don't think I ever found as eloquent a way to put it as he did, but it's something I've tried to tell people in the past is prepping's individual. Prepping is down to what is your issue, what is in your environment, what's in your lane that you have to deal with. And this is the reason why Andrew and I work so well as co-hosts, because he's in Michigan and I'm in Louisiana. We look at different situations from totally opposite directions because we have different environments and different concerns. So what I would say to a person, because I will flatly admit that I have made fairly light of the coronavirus. I personally am not extraordinarily concerned about it, but I'm a 37-year-old man in very good health that's not immunocompromised. My child is old enough to be outside of the window where she's at a high risk of developing a serious case. My immediate family, the 3 people in this house that I'm responsible for, we are not extremely worried about coronavirus. But I have parents who are elderly, and I'm concerned about them. I have a great nephew that is like month old, I think, as of yesterday. I'm very concerned about him. So what I would tell anybody that is nervous about the coronavirus is if you fall into one of those high-risk groups, you should be taking individual precautions to deal with your individual situation. But if you're not in one of those high-risk groups, I would tell you to take a deep breath and stop buying like eight cases of toilet paper. Unless your plan is to eBay that stuff in the next couple of days, then you're gonna make a killing.
Those people need to be flicked in the freaking eye.
That's one way of putting it.
Dude, I got a garden hose on the side of the house that'll do the job with no paper. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I find it funny, Andrew, that the whole concern is it's a respiratory issue, so let's go buy all of the toilet paper, and
Well, speaking of memes, which is really funny because some of them are actually, they're spot on, just savage, like as far as just pointing the obvious out to people, and it's like I saw one that was something like, for all the assholes that freaking bought all the hand sanitizer, hand soap, and toilet paper, congratulations, you made it so the other 100 people that you need to shake hands with can't wash their hands. It's like, it's ridiculous. I understand, and I read an interesting article about the whole idea behind, like, the psychology behind panic buying, and it's just interesting because of the fact that it's really what it comes down to. It's the mob mentality, for one, but it's also it's also comes from the idea of not being included, and it comes from the psychology behind like not getting enough, and being and feeling left out. And so you see, for example, like Derek, you see myself and Phil, buying like two rolls of toilet paper, or two packs of toilet paper, or like or four slabs of four things of like canned goods, um or whatever it is, or ammo, whatever. And so you're like, okay, well, if they're doing it, then there's not going to be enough for me, so I'm going to have to do it. And so you buy some, and then the person behind you sees it and they buy some, and it becomes that mob mentality of like, oh crap, we need to get in there and get some. And like, it's ridiculous. Like, honestly, I mean, I understand the reasoning. I mean, I get it. Like, I haven't panic bought, but like I have went out and I have bought like extra, like like I've been to the grocery store now twice in the last, 2 weeks, which is a little bit. I try to go once every like 3 weeks or so, once a month. But you go like it's. I understand that thought that, hey, there might not be enough, but like, yeah, I've upped some stuff. Like I bought a little, instead of buying like four canned goods, I bought 8 or something like that. Like I've upped that, just in case like I am stuck home for for that period of time, and that's also what it stems from. But yeah, I mean, for those individuals who are panic buying like this, I really hope that this is an eye-opening event for them, kind of like how like Katrina was. Like Phil, I know, talks about like how Katrina was a big eye-opener for him, and I hope that this is a big eye-opener for people, because I'm really hoping that, and when things do settle down, instead of going back to normal, but and going back to that 3-day supply of food, or that day of supply of food, and hey, I got to stop at the store today or else I can't make spaghetti because I don't have everything. I hope that this kind of kicks people in the butt and gets them to say, well, my kid likes SpaghettiOs, I like spaghetti, my husband likes chicken, like whatever it is. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna buy, all this instead of one pack of chicken, I'm gonna go buy 2 or 4 packs of chicken. I'm going to throw the other ones in the freezer, or I'm going to, Ziploc the other ones and separate them out. Or, like, hey, instead of buying just that one thing of spaghetti noodles, that box that's going to get me through tonight, I'm going to buy 6, because what's the difference between me buying one right now or another 4 down the road or 5 down the road? Like, and then you have that. That's what I don't like. I'm hoping people get the idea.
Right. I mean, because there are people out there that legitimately need toilet paper right now because they've run out, and
Exactly.
they can't get any because the panic buyers went and they bought all of it. And
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to be able, in a genuine crisis, or even a fabricated one like this, you're never going to be able to prevent the panic buying, because we have laws that prevent the made up term price gouging, which is really just a way to keep the market stable in a time like this. But you'll have these shelves that go empty, and so preparing in and of itself is preparing for whenever the shelves are empty. And if it is just buying one extra, an extra can just to keep, just in case, every time you go grocery shopping, that's a good way to get started. Phil, I want to bring you in here. How else would you approach this for somebody who's brand new to prepping, and they this is their moment that they want to start taking prepping seriously?
Well, what I've always tried to do, and maybe it's my own perspective having kind of come up in the military, is that I always start with what your variable is, what your situation is, what your mission is, and I plan backwards from there until I get to what materials you need, what personnel you need, so on and so forth. So I always tell people, I'm like, if you're trying to get started in prepping, and you think about needing the bunker full of ammunition and beans, bullets, and band-aids, and think I'm never going to get there, so it's too overwhelming, it's too big of a hurdle to jump over initially, I tell everybody, I'm like, prep for 3 days. Everything you can think of needing for 3 days. I need X amount of toilet paper, X amount of drinkable water, X amount of food. I need, a reasonable amount of ammunition, a firearm to protect myself. I need basic medical gear, bandage, hydrogen peroxide, so on and so forth. I need everything I need for 3 days. Start there. Most people can amass the things they need for 3 days. If you can't do it right here and now, It won't take long because the average person has 3 days of supply in their home. If you
Right.
don't, then go fix that problem right now. Well, not right now while the stores are empty and craziness is happening, but go fix that problem immediately because you should have 3 days of food, water, and basic hygiene requirements in your home. Once you get to 3 days, go to 7 and you just double it up. And then once you get to the 7-day period, go to 15, then go to 30. The point is, these are all the things I need for this span of time. And then you just keep raising the bar as far as I need more, more, more so that I can stretch out. Andrew and I were talking about this earlier today, and I think we're both at a pretty comfortable spot where, like, if in my home you shut off the utilities and you barricaded me in my home, no electricity, no water, no gas, my family can exist in this home with what we have in these 4 walls for 30 days. We won't miss a meal. We won't go hungry. We will be fine. Now, that is 30 days predicated on my experience from Hurricane Katrina, because if you weren't in an area where you literally got flooded out of your home, then the supply system was shocked so hard. There were so many stores flooded and there was such disruption to the interstate highway system down here. It took 30 days before some of the outlying suburbs around New Orleans started seeing regular fuel deliveries and regular groceries coming in. So Katrina, like Andrew said, that was my genesis. That was when I became a prepper. But it really came about because I looked at the situation. I'm like, what would I do if I had to feed my family and take care of them for 30 days, and I had nothing coming in to do it? So when all of this happened, I mean, I looked at my wife and I said, let's double up I told her this like a week and a half before all this started. I'm like, let's double up the grocery bill. We've got the money. We've got money in savings for these kinds of situations. This is where we're at. This is where we're at on canned food, toilet paper, all the hygiene stuff. Let's just double up what we're going to get anyway, and we'll put it away. We've got room in the closets. We've got room for it. And then when all this kicked off, since what was it, about Thursday or Friday, when it really started getting crazy, I looked at my wife and I'm like, we've got everything we need. I mean, at this point, if we go out, it's because we're trying to keep ahead of using the things that we have in this home, but we're not hurting for anything. When we went through a store today and the store shelves were bare and there was no toilet paper to be found, I don't care. I'm sitting on as much as I need for quite a while.
Yeah.
Prepping is I tell everybody, I'm like, prepping is not a casual activity. It's not a thing you do. It's not a hobby. It's a way of thinking. It's a lifestyle. It's the idea that I know things go bad sometimes. I need to have things to mitigate or counteract whatever's going to go bad that might happen to me and my family. I need to be prepared to deal with that situation. Some of that means you have a fully stocked food pantry and an extra case of toilet paper. Sometimes it means having a handgun and a bunch of ammunition. Sometimes it means other things. But it means that we've thought about these scenarios in advance and we've put down procedures and preps in advance to deal with them when they come up. Because the day you run out of toilet paper is the wrong day to figure out there's none on the store shelves. So in your hypothetical of a person has no toilet paper and they need to go buy some today and they're screwed, my only answer would be, why did you wait till you were out of toilet paper to go get some more?
Yeah. So, Andrew, I got a question for you. Preppers get this weird stigma attached to them. Like, we are these people prepping for the boogaloo. We're prepping for a nuclear holocaust or the zombie apocalypse. But that's not what prepping is about. What would you say to somebody who used to, or might still be along those lines of thinking, in order to tell them that, this is something that everybody needs to do for these very reasons?
It's kind of funny because the guys I work with, I get made fun of a lot for the whole preparedness mindset, the whole, you're prepping for the zombies, you're prepping for, government takeover, stuff like that. And I just laughed about it and, joked around with it. But then all of a sudden, like, now this is going on and I just look at them, I'm like, hey, not so funny now, is it, assholes? And so, for example, like my roommate, he's made fun of me a lot about it. He's always like, oh, I can't, he's like, oh, you got food, water set aside and ammo and all this stuff. And he'd always, over the couple years I've lived with him, he's made fun of me. Well, all of a sudden, a couple of days ago, he texted me and he was like, "Hey," he goes, "we need to start getting supplies." I'm like, "What do you mean we?" I go, "You need to start getting supplies."
What's all this we stuff? I'm gonna lock on my bedroom door. I've got plenty.
Right? And I'm like, "You don't know where I'm hiding my food." I mean, it's right under his nose, but like, yeah. And so he goes, "Well," what do you need to get? And I listed off a bunch of stuff for him to get. And he goes, "Okay, well, I'll get the next run." And I go, "No, you'll get your next run." I said, "I'm going to go get more. Like, don't worry about me." And I go, "Not so funny now, is it?" I'm like, "You always make fun of me." He's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." But no, I mean, like more it. And I've had this conversation with a guy I work with. He just had a small child, and he's got a stay-at-home wife and everything like that, and so in the winter we lost power, and he was like, "Yeah, I need to go to the store. I need to get like wet wipes and stuff for my kid." And I go, why don't you have that stuff?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" And I said, "You as a father, you as a husband of all people, you should have things set aside to take care of your wife and child." I'm like, I'm not trying to like badmouth you for being a bad person or a bad husband or a bad father, like, because you're not. But like, this is the time, like, this is the reason for you to have these supplies. For the power goes out, and or we have like, luckily this winter was not bad at all, but we get, it's like the power goes out, the roads are, you can't go down the roads because it's an ice storm outside, and all of a sudden you pull out the wet wipes and you pull the last one out for your kid and you have to wipe their butt. Like, there's alternatives you can definitely come up with quick, but you should have a stack of those. And so we were talking about what's going on now, and he was like, "Yeah," he goes, I went to Meyer, and he's like, "I got a whole stack. I got like he was telling me all the stuff he got." I'm like, "Great, that's awesome." Like, you should have those supplies on hand. And so it's those kind of conversations that I've had with people over the last couple of days is, hey, like, and I mean, like, I had a friend of mine, he texted me and he was like, "Hey," he was, get me a list of quick of things quick, and I got busy at work, and I got him only a couple of things, but he ended up going to Meyer and he picked up those things plus like a crap ton of items, because he thought, because I told him, I said, first off, figure out what you need. Of course, if you need it, because he has a kid, he has a son as well. I said, of course, the food is important, because you have to you have to feed yourself. Right now, water is not a big issue because they haven't stopped water filtration. They haven't, the water plants haven't stopped pumping water, or the power hasn't went out. So we're not at that stage yet. But I told him, I said, focus on some food. I said, right now, I said, what's most important is calories. Like, yeah, protein is important, and like nutrition is important. So keep that in mind. But if your son, I'm like, get SpaghettiOs, get raviolis, get stuff that your son will eat. And so he went and picked up a bunch of stuff. But those are the conversations I've been having over this last few days, is with people that, like, it's, that joke of, hey, it's not so funny anymore because we're in this situation. And it's, yeah. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it now, as far as the reaction from people. So, and that's where I would go with anybody that is coming on, and anybody that is interested in it is, yeah, it's not a laughing matter as far as feeding your family or yourself. Luckily, I have a roommate, but luckily, like, I'm single. Like, I have to worry about myself. Now, if something were to happen and I got to bug out, yeah, then I got to worry about my parents and stuff like that. But I know they're set. But yeah, it's just that mindset of, how do you take care of yourself? How do you take care of your family?
Sean brings up a good point in the comments. He says you can be rational and have common sense and be prepared. And again, getting rid of the stigma with preppers, I think, is the opportunity we should kind of focus on here, because of the fact that preppers are like, we're kind of labeled based off of like shows like Doomsday Preppers, right? So, Phil,
yeah,
if we wanted to tell somebody like how to think about what it is that they need, what would you say are some commonly forgotten items for like the generic household?
Commonly forgotten for a generic household. Okay.
Tampons.
Well, No, see, here's the weird part. Like, I have to put myself in the mindset of people who I don't really associate with a lot anymore because, like, I haven't been in an average household a long time. I mean, the thing of it is that the average household, unless I'm just totally in my blinders, is going to have at least 3 or 4 days worth of food. If not, like, we need to start all the way over at the very beginning.
Right.
I imagine they probably have like a week's worth of hygiene supplies. I mean, I'm thinking average household, something that's very commonly forgotten. If you are totally not into the prepper mind space, is you might be a firearm owner, and if you are, you're halfway there. You may not have any quick way to access your firearm in the event of a serious like life or death situation where you need to have an option for violence in order to save life or limb. You may not have what most of us refer to in the game as like an IFAC or trauma gear, bleeder kits, things like tourniquets, quick collide, more advanced medical gear than just band-aids and neosporin. You might very well have like canned foods. You may not have anything that's long-term storable. Things like Mountain House freeze-dried foods, things that are vacuum packed. I mean, to me, the biggest difference between like a household that is in the prepper mindset and the average household, it's going to be the degree to which we keep some of those things on hand. Like most households, I would like to think have like a 38 special in somebody's sock drawer in case they need to protect themselves. God forbid something happen. In this household, however, and I can't pull it out help because then YouTube and Facebook would shut down your feed. But needless to say, there's a 9mm handgun on my hip almost all the time. There are several firearms that can be accessed within 15, 20 seconds by myself or my wife in this house. There's a plate carrier loaded with rifle-rated plates in case, God forbid, somebody decides to kick off Red Dawn in southern Louisiana. There's IFACs in several locations. There's tourniquets and quick collide and all sorts of things. Now, here's the funny part of all this. Even though I'm espousing you have all this stuff, because when things go bad, they tend to go really bad. I've also got a huge box of Band-Aids and a bunch of Neosporin and hydrogen peroxide and alcohol prep pads. And I pull that out more often than anything because I have a 7-year-old and she runs into everything. So, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, to me, it's a dual question because the average household will usually have the minor stuff, but they'll miss the more advanced or what they consider to be the more extreme measures, the things they don't think are really necessary. It works the other way around for a lot of the preppers, though, because I've pointed out to some people who have they have a tourniquet hanging off of every doorknob in the whole house, but I'm like, hey, do you have any Band-Aids and Neosporin? And they get this blank look on their face. It's like they thought of everything, but then they missed the basic stuff because they were so wrapped around the axle about the prepper stuff. And that's why I tell everybody, I'm like, prepping is getting ready for everything. That's why I tell people, I'm like, I don't look at prepping for the zombie apocalypse or a nuclear winter. I don't prep for a scenario. I prep because I prep from the perspective of I have to maintain my family's well-being, period, no matter what comes up. So my goal is to prepare for as many different facets of our daily lives as I possibly can so that no matter what happens outside this home, in this home, we can take care of ourselves. And if we have to abandon this home, then we have some kind of a plan in action to be able to get the heck out of here with the bare minimum things we need to survive away from this home.
Tony says on YouTube he loves zombie preppers, and if that's what you're prepping for, there's nothing wrong with that. I would say that, go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry. No. Finish your thought. I got something to chime in there, but
the thing is, I mean, if you're preparing for a scenario where you need to bug out, then prepare for a bug out. But if you're only preparing for a bug out and you're ignoring the bug in or quarantine or whatever the case may be, you're missing out on some things. Prepping doesn't need to be daunting, but if you're going to do it, you should take it very seriously. And, Sean points out beans and bullets and basic first aid, non-perishable with long shelf life and water. Chloe, who is also, I believe she says she was also a Michigander, she says guns and ammo, wood stove, and your own well. And if you live in an area where you are prone to very cold, brutal winters, then yeah, a wood-burning stove is fantastic. And even if it's not, a wood-burning stove in your house, if you are able to get one or have one, that's great for being able to cook food in your house. So, like Phil said, individualize your prepping for what your mission is going to be. Go ahead, Andrew. You had a thought.
Yeah, I had a couple. So first off, I would love a wood burning stove. Again, growing up, my family has one. That they have a fireplace really that we can boot up. We've booted up before in the winters. But where I'm at now, we don't have a wood burning stove. We don't have a fireplace. Basically, I would highly recommend if you're in an area like myself or some of these other listeners. Definitely like layers is a big thing. I have a crap ton of sweatshirts and I have the ability to layer up. One of the biggest things that I have that I've utilized many times is a single burner camp stove. I remember it's not this last winter, but not this past winter, but the winter before it. We lost power, I remember, and I had everything out for chili, and we lost power, and I'm like, well, crap, what am I gonna do? Oh, so I walked upstairs, immediately grabbed the camp stove, put it on the oven and on top of the stove rather, and started making chili. And my roommates get home and they're like, "How are you cooking?" I'm like, "Camp stove." Like, are you surprised? And so yeah, I made chili, and that and without kind of like no power or whatever. It's like I had a headlamp, and basically that was how I was cooking, and it helped warm up the house a little bit too. But going off like the whole zombie apocalypse thing, I'm going to take a page out of we've said it multiple times on our show. My uncle, he had a great way of looking at that whole thing, because as preppers and stuff, we do get the whole joke, oh, you're prepping for the zombie apocalypse. Well, yeah, because what is your zombie? The mindset of what is the mindset of your zombie isn't just flesh eating creatures or monsters or whatever. It's in Michigan, it's a snowstorm or an ice storm. That's my zombie. Maybe like we don't really get tornadoes where I'm at are rare, but the occasional tornado. That's my zombie. Phil, his zombie is a hurricane, a flood. Your zombie down there, Derek, is probably a hurricane or some just tornadoes or whatever. Drought or something.
Yeah.
That's
a good point. That's a good point, Andrew. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but drought, that's not something.
No, you're fine.
That's not something that I really thought about. Even living here in East Texas, it happens all the time. But what happens if you have a prolonged drought where the farms can't keep the grocery stores stocked? And because I prep, because I have extra food that I don't plan on eating immediately, it's there for emergencies. Should the shelves be bare, I can't even find beans, corn, any sort of vegetables whatsoever, and the price of beef is going up because cows are dying, prematurely, not being able to be slaughtered properly. Well, what are you going to do? That's not something that was, that needs to be, that's something that needs to be planned for, and in order for situations just like this, if the shelves are bare, what are you going to do to take care of yourself and your family? And Sean says that's an excellent analogy right now. The zombies is all the panic and mass hysteria from this virus narrative. And it's true, because the zombie right now for everybody is the shelves are bare because of the panic. Now, the panic was essentially fabricated by the media, which upset a bunch of people. And they went off and decided to buy up everything they could on the shelves. But here's another thing. Whenever they do that, you have these elderly people that might need things and they can't do it because, the stores are barren. And go ahead, Phil. You look like you got
I was just going to poke in there because, the thing that we fight against as people that espouse prepping a lot of times is a lot of people just blow us off because they think, well, that's never going to happen. So I like to break things down to microcosms where I can find a situation that's going to perfectly validate my point, and this is it. Because even if it wasn't coronavirus, even if you think the idea of prepping is ridiculous, even if you think it'll never happen to you, even if you live someplace where you don't get hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, floods, if you find one of those places, let me know, by the way, because I haven't seen one yet on Earth, and I've been around half of it. But if you believe all that, then all I can say is, what happens the night you reach into your pantry because you're in the middle of cooking dinner and you need a can of X and you're out? Are you prepared to go to the store at 8, 9 o'clock at night to go get the one thing you need to finish this meal you started preparing? What happens if you're busting to take a poop and you go into the closet where all the toilet paper is and you realize that someone used the last roll and didn't let you know so you could go get some the last time you went to the grocery store, and you have a problem on your hands now? It's not about waiting for the zombies to start eating people, even though I love Uncle Randy's analogy of what's your zombie. But I tell people, I'm like, it's a personality that says, why buy one when I could buy two and have one sitting on the shelf? Because I don't want to run out. It doesn't even have to get to a life or death situation. My wife and I went out today and bought extra groceries because we had plenty in the house, but I don't want to run out of anything and be inconvenienced by it. If I want to come home one night and eat tacos, I want to have ground beef and taco seasoning. I don't want to have to be inconvenienced or do without. And I shouldn't have to. But it comes from the idea of proactive pre-planning to say, I need X, so I'm going to go get 2 of them. So that's what I try to tell people. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine just the other day who said, well, I'm not a prepper. And I'm like, but you just told me you have like this little cache of canned food and extra food and stuff. What do you think that is? It's no different than me saying you should have extra food. Or just because I stock Mountain House, you stock canned green beans, it doesn't matter. You're still stockpiling. You're still developing a cache of extra things. It's the same personality. I use the term prepper, even though a lot of people shy away from it because they don't like the negative stigma, but I use it because I'm trying to normalize it. Like, I don't care what you call it. I just want everybody to have the stuff they need to take care of themselves. Because in my experience, if you rely on some other person or entity to take care of you, you might be disappointed.
Yeah, and you know, for those that that do worry about that, or that this is an eye opener for them in the sense that, you know, they don't want to be you know, waiting in lines, you know, for FEMA to show up and give them their rations. You know, you wouldn't have to if you prepared. Andrew, do you have any thoughts that you might want to, you know, share with somebody who's just getting involved?
I mean, nothing that we really haven't hit on yet. I mean, but it's just, you know, back to, you know, just find your zombie again. You know, just find that reason for doing it. It can be something super small, like what Phil said. It could be something like, hey, I'm just sick and tired of reaching in the pantry and not finding what I want. Like, and if you prepared in the idea of, well, hey, like, these are the meals I like to cook, and this is what I like to eat the most often. Like, if you like spaghetti and you eat spaghetti 3-4 times in a week or a month, I mean, you should probably have a lot of like noodles and stuff to make the sauce and meat and, you know, whatever you want to put into it. Like, you should have a lot of that. That way, like, if you want to go make it, I mean, like, if that's your jam, then like you should have that on hand. But you know, and that's the funny thing, like the whole, because the term prepping, thanks to you know, shows like Doomsday Preppers and stuff like that, it's got like a terrible, like a very negative look, a stigma, you know, on it. And so some people that I talk to when they're talking about, you know, the preparedness mindset and stuff like that, it's like, well, I'm not a prepper, and I don't want to be labeled that, or I don't care, or I'm not one at all. And it's like, okay, well, you know, kind of like what Phil was saying a little bit, it's like, well, you know, when you get ready for camping, like, or say you're going on a camping trip, what do? Well, I go buy this, I go buy this, I go buy this, I do this, and, you know, I buy canned goods, or buy, you know, stuff for whatever. So you're prepping, you're preparing for that event.
Yeah.
What's the difference between doing that and upscaling it so that you're at home? So that, and that's where and I get some people that look at me and are like, oh, like,
yeah,
light bulb clicks on, you know, Dean kind of thing. And And so that's the thing is like, and I mean, for the longest time, I've prepared to bug out. I mean, I have stuff ready to where like if I need to take off, I can. But it's, you know, recently in the last year or so, I've, you know, it's because like I move around so much, and it's like, well, I try to be light so that next time I move, I don't have a bunch of stuff that I have to move. But like it's basically come down to the point of like, you know what, screw it, I don't care. Next time I move, people are going to look at me when they start pulling food out of like the out of the pantry, and they're like, oh, how many more canned goods do you have? Yeah, you know, just smile and help. You're getting beer out of this, so kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, for someone who's new to this idea, just take it slow, because it can be very overwhelming. It really can be. Phil and I have had that talk a lot with people, is where do I start? Because it is very overwhelming. But I mean, look at where you're at. Look how many people are you feeding? How many people do you have to take care of? And just start like with what Phil said. Start with 3 days. Start with 1 day. Start with 2 days. You know, whatever it is, just start with that couple days and then upscale it.
Just start.
That's
right.
Yeah, just start. And that's the biggest thing is people don't know where to start. I mean, it's like working out. Well, I don't really know where to start. Well, just go and start walking on the treadmill. You know, start with sit-ups at home. Just start doing it. Start getting into that mindset, because once you get into that mindset, it's hard to get out.
Yeah, you'll wake up.
Just look at things anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, you'll wake up one day. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. You're fine. You're fine. I mean,
yeah.
And that's what you're gonna wake up. You're gonna get, once you get in that mindset and you start looking. I mean, it's just like medical. Like I'm in the medical field. I'm a paid on call firefighter, and my roommate and I, like, we talk about medical a lot. He's very passionate as well. And the one thing I bring to my full-time job is I try to bring that medical mindset, because we're medically licensed at my job. And it's like, I'm trying to get that mindset through people. It's like, hey, our license doesn't end at the gates for this job. It ends, you know, it never ends. Like if you're driving home and you see an accident, you can pull over, you can help.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly trying to bring up that medical mindset. Because I mean, I carry at least one tourniquet on me at all times. Sometimes I have two, sometimes I have three.
Yeah.
It all depends. I mean, it all depends really, like how many pockets I have that day, I guess. But I always at least have one tourniquet on me, if not two, at all times.
You know,
or near me.
Yeah, and you know, I always I've brought up on the show before. There's another podcast that I listen to every now and again, and one of the things that they say on that is that everybody should carry 4 things on them: something sharp, something bright, something lethal, and something medical. Bright being a flashlight, sharp being a knife, medical being a first aid kit, and lethal being your gun. And if you have all 4 of those things, you're essentially prepared to get to wherever you need to hunker down at or leave, if that's what you need to do, depending on the situation. And, you know, like my wife, she made fun of me the first time I got a trauma kit and I kept it in my car. And she goes, "What are you ever going to need that for?" And I said, "I don't know. I could be driving down the road one day and see a horrific accident and I have the supplies that I can render first aid, or I might just cut my finger one day and need a Band-Aid." And the thing is, it wasn't a week and a half after that, my wife got another piercing in her ear, the little piece of cartilage that kind of sticks out from your ear. She got that pierced, and we left the piercing place. And as I'm driving down the road, I look over, and she's got this big old drip of blood just rolling down her face. I'm like, "Oh, damn, babe, hang on." I pulled over, I grabbed my trauma kit, grabbed some gauze, cleaned it up, put some disinfectant on it, and guess what? The bleeding stopped, and it was because I had the first aid kit there. And it could be something so small, like kind of like what we've been talking about here. And whenever you do start, once you start and you take those first steps, you're like you were saying, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to realize that you've been preparing for some time for some scenario, and you're going to be far, far ahead of everyone else in your community. You're going to be at a point where you don't need to worry about anything going wrong for the most part because you've got everything covered. You've got the essentials covered. And, you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, you know what? Maybe I want to take a class on traumatic first aid. I have a firefighter buddy of mine, and he's going to teach me how to administer an IV because I haven't. It's not something that I learned. I've learned a lot of other, first aid, but administering an IV is not one of them. And, if you could keep some saline solution on hand, that might come in handy. But that's because I've gotten to the point where I'm starting to branch out and figure out other means of prepping. Not everybody needs to go that route, especially not immediately. Phil, I'm sorry. I've been ranting a lot. What you got?
Well, no, I was just going to say that your experience having like an IFAC in a car closely mirrors what I did, because I have in each of me and my wife's vehicles, I keep a quick clot, a rat's tourniquet, I'm struggling to remember what else, an Israeli bandage, and some gloves. And I keep it in a really small pack. There's one in my wife's car. There's one in mine. And this is in addition to the substantially larger IFAC I keep in my truck that has cat tourniquet and a couple of goodies that my wife's kit doesn't keep because she doesn't frankly know how to use a lot of it. So I tried to tailor the kits to what does my wife know how to use? But she thought I was a little over the top when I handed that to her and stuck it in her glove box the first time. And I explained to her, I'm like, here's the thing, honey. I'm like, how many times have you been shot at driving on the interstate going to work? And she said, never. And I'm like, okay, how many car accidents have you seen? And she stopped. And I was like, I've personally stopped 3 times in commuting to my current job. I drive into New Orleans and out. And I've been at that job 7 years, I think. Yep. Just finished off 7 years. I've personally stopped for no less than 5 car accidents. Twice, I was the first one on the scene. The first person that stopped, beat the ambulance, beat the police. And if anybody had been critically injured, it'd have been me dealing with the problem before anybody else showed up who had more training than I did. So I tell everybody, I'm like, having an IFAC in a car sounds crazy until you put it in those terms. I'm not thinking about the active shooter situation I'm going to have to go to my car to get my gear for. I'm thinking about the fact that I drive 95 miles a day to and from work. And that's 95 miles round trip. I could come across a car accident. Somebody could be bleeding out. So that's why I have a tourniquet. That's why I have quick clot. That's why I have a chest seal, because I don't get to determine the situation that I find myself in. And that's another thing I try to put in people's heads. We have to prepare for any situation that comes to us. No one sent me a memo yesterday and said, hey, there's going to be a serious car accident where somebody went halfway through the windshield and you're going to be the first person on scene tomorrow. Do you mind? It's the truth. No one asked me in advance if that's a situation I want to be involved in. I can either be prepared for it or as prepared as I can be, or I can not be. But I don't have it within me to come across someone who's knocking at death's door and lack the ability to try to help them. I don't have that within me. And more to the point is, if I'm involved in a serious accident, I really want to go home to my wife and kid. So those tourniquets, they're for self-aid. That quick clot, that's for my own head wound. That's so that I have the things to take care of myself. Or if someone comes across the scene, I can point at that IFAC on the roof, and if they know halfway what they're doing, they can rip down off the roof, and they've got the things they need to take care of me. But it's like I tell everybody, I'm like, this is not about prepping for the zombie apocalypse. This is not about prepping for Mad Max, the Mad Max of the future where there's no gasoline and it's roving gangs running around in the streets. Leave the sci-fi at the door for just a second. This is about prepping for things that if they don't happen to you every day, they happen to somebody every day. Every day, people get in car accidents. Every day, people have a violent home break-in while they're home and they have to defend their families. Every day, people blow a tire 2 days before payday and they need to go replace the tire, and they better have money in their savings account to go do it. Every single day, someone encounters an emergency in this country. So you can make the decision to accept. It could be your day-to-day and be prepared to deal with the problem, or you could not. But it's about everyday emergencies.
Absolutely. And, if there's go ahead, sir.
No, sorry. No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
No, I mean, so I mean, kind of going off of what Phil, the train that Phil started, kind of piggyback on that. I mean, you can either be an asset or a liability, and so if you prepare as far as, I mean, if it's just for a winter or a tornado, hurricane, whatever it is, if you prepare yourself and your family for that, you're being an asset to yourself, to your family, to possibly your community. You're not being a liability and a drain on on society, and have to I mean, what's going to look better to your family or to your wife? Like, hey, sorry, I spent all my money on doing this other stupid crap, versus and we have to wait for the government or like FEMA to come through and hopefully drop us off some food supplies for a couple days, or hey, I have everything under control. When you go, if and that's why like Phil and I really push medical on our show, is because it's like, if you are the first one on scene and you're just a passerby and you show up to a car accident and someone is on the side of the road, and I mean they have a head laceration, they broke their arm, and I mean they have like something going on with their arm, or honestly, if they split their arm and they're spurting blood. I mean, if you have the ability to take care of that and to help and render aid, you're being an asset. And if you just stand there and you don't know what to do, you're in the way. You're being a liability. So, and that's what I talk to people too about, is like, do you want to be an asset or a liability? Do you want to be able to take care of yourself and others, or you just want to sit there with this look on your face like, hey, I'm just gonna stand here and not do anything because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And what goes along with that is the knowledge, because having all this freaking cool gear and not knowing basic triage techniques makes you absolutely useless. Because I'm going to tell you that there have been several times, just being a dad with a young child, where the difference between knowing I could deal with a problem at home and taking my kid to an emergency room needlessly was just the little bit of medical knowledge I have to be able to tell a minor oh darn from a major oh crap. I mean, it seems silly, but it's like, like if your kid falls and says, "Oh, my arm hurts," most parents just freak the hell out. I look at my kid, start maneuvering the arm. I'm looking for anything distended. I'm looking for anything out on angles. I'm looking for the joint obviously not behaving the way it's supposed to. I'm looking for massive swelling. I'm doing everything I know from a basic combat lifesaver course that taught me the very basics of how to triage somebody. So I know if I need to medevac them or just put them in a Humvee and take them to the local doc. But I'm trying to figure out, is this a dislocation? Is this a break? Is this just a case of tendonitis? But having the knowledge to go along with all this gear is absolutely as important, because if you come upon a scene and you have no gear with you whatsoever, but you can at least be a good witness and you can be a good point of contact to keep control of the situation and then hand off to the medical crew or the police that come in. Like if you're the first person that comes on the scene and you tell the cop, look, I'm seeing this, this, and this, and those tell me this might be a spinal injury, he can relay that upstream to people that are coming with the proper gear to deal with that problem. I don't carry things I need to deal with a spinal injury. The only thing I can do is keep the person still. But by knowing I'm dealing with a spinal injury or suspecting it, I at least know enough to keep that person immobile. Whereas if you don't have that training, if you don't have that basic triage technique, if you don't even have the basic knowledge of what you're doing and you move that person, you can make the problem 10 times worse.
Yep. If you got a tourniquet but you don't know how to use it, you may as well just not have it.
I like to point this out all the time. Tourniquets are not used for head wounds. And it's funny, but it goes to my point of, if you don't know what the hell you're doing with the thing, it does more harm than good.
Yeah.
But yeah, drop that on somebody one time if you want to get a laugh. Tourniquets are not appropriate for head wounds. Say with a straight face.
I mean, you can't tourniquet the neck. I mean, yeah, I guess you could, but
you could.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we kind of got off subject as far as like preparedness for like home and stuff or whatever, but I mean, it all boils back to the preparedness mindset. What you're preparing for, whether you're preparing for, a medical event, or you're preparing for just be at home for a couple of days with no power, or just you're quarantined in your house for 14 days. Like that's what I mean. So that this all revolves around the preparedness mindset.
Yeah,
it just depends on what your zombie is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that the government could put a blanket quarantine on everybody for 14 days. Do you have enough food to feed your family for 14 days?
As long as the internet doesn't get shut down and I've got Netflix, I'm solid.
It's funny. I did hear that Pornhub was giving free premium accounts to people in Italy. I found that to be hilarious.
I have a VPN.
Oh, anyway, on that note. Okay, all right. We've had enough shenanigans for one evening. Phil, Andrew, thank you guys so much for coming on. Andrew, before we depart, do you have any last words? You want to plug the podcast? Got any little nuggets of insight you want to leave with the people?
Yeah, I mean, for first off, if anybody wants to check us out, you can find us on Facebook at Matter of Facts Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at MOF Podcast. If you go to www.mofpodcast.com, that's directly to the website that I've been working on, and it's got all of our links and everything there too. But I mean, otherwise, it's one of those things where, like I said, it's just start doing it. Just get out there and start preparing. Just try to get in that mindset, because once you start doing it, it's hard to get out of that mindset and start thinking of other things, because it definitely changes the way you think. So just get into doing it, and just do it for yourself. If you don't do it for yourself, at least if you have a family, do it for your family too, because you should be able to provide for your family, for your wife and kids. Or like, boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, you should be able to provide for them. So if you do it, if you start getting in that mindset, then hopefully things will follow and they'll get in that mindset. And it's kind of, it trickles down. So just get into it. It doesn't matter how you do it. Just get into it.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, thank you, sir. Phil, when's the sequel coming out?
God, you had to do it, didn't you?
Of course I did. By the way, in case,
week, right, Phil?
if you have not read American Insurgent, available now on Amazon by Phil Rabelais, you need to buy that book right now, put it in your prep kit, and read it, because it's amazing. Anyway, Phil, when's the sequel coming out, man?
I'm not giving a date. I will say that I had to pick that book back up after like almost a year taken off, just because of all the crazes that happened in my work life. I'm currently like 67,000 words into it and writing the finale. It's just, I know from experience that writing the finale is usually the hard part for me, because it's like there's so many little pieces I want to tie all in, and I don't want to leave anything out. It's getting there. It's coming. It's coming. I swear to God, it's coming this time. And the title will be American Insurrection.
That's amazing. It's brilliant. It's American Insurgent. Now you got American Insurrection.
Yeah, don't ask about the third one, because that's like a vague idea and no working title. I got to get one thing done at a time. I did just want to say though that particular to our Instagram, I've really been trying lately to like shove a lot more content to our Instagram, because like at least I am horrible about doing it. So I jumped into the meme game, and I'm just going to say that if you have a bit of a sense of humor and don't offend easily, some of the memes coming out of MOF Podcast on Instagram have been hilarious lately.
That I can vouch for that. They have been very, very entertaining, and I very much have appreciated them. My side has been hurting at times from laughing so hard.
Well, good. I mean, not good that your side was hurting, but can't take yourself too seriously.
Oh, of course not. If you did, you would. Well, probably. Well, I don't know what you would do if you took yourself seriously, because I've never taken myself seriously. But okay, guys. Again, thank you guys so much for your time, for coming on, guys. If you haven't started prepping, just start. Just buy a little bit extra and keep it on hand just in case. Also, we got some. There's some runoffs going on, and we're going to be feeding you guys information about those as well. And that's all I got. Until next Sunday, arm yourself with knowledge and share the ammo. Thanks, guys.